Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Temp Coffee Podcast. I'm your host, Keri, but normally you would hear Tim's voice. Unfortunately, Tim was not able to join us on this episode, but we are with some amazing people from touring coffee roasters, I should say, in Portland, Oregon. So I'm sitting with Tato and Eugene, really two amazing people, and I cannot wait to chat with them and actually learn a little bit more about what touring coffee is all about. And we want to give a shout out to our sponsors real quick for being able to help us out with our podcast. So we're going to give a shout out to San Cristobal Coffee Imports, which imports um, coffee from Mexico and Ethiopia. Super great, super awesome. Thank you, San Cristobal, for your sponsorship. We are also giving a shout out to Seattle Coffee Automation. If you are a small to mid coffee roaster who is looking for a weighing machine but doesn't take up a whole lot of space and a whole lot of money, Seattle Automation is a great way to go. We also want to thank Primo Roasting Equipment. They are our main sponsor. They have a wonderful lineup of different roasters that are made in the USA. They can custom build and do all kinds of great stuff with your roaster. And I feel like Cooley Coffee. Cooley Coffee is a new sponsor that is created a self-serve pour-over machine that is a automated machine. Really super cool. And we'll go ahead and drop the links of our sponsors into the podcast. So let's get started here. Hi, Tato. Hi, Eugene. How y'all doing?
Okay, thank you for having us.
Thank you. We are both in our back rooms, as obvious, in our roasteries. I'm in mine, and you guys are in yours. Um, and really appreciate you guys coming on. This is really exciting to have both of you on the podcast. And well, let's just start things off with saying, wow, okay, I'm blanking. Sorry. Well, Eugene, why don't you go ahead and take us through the journey of touring coffee, of how you got started,
Yeah,
and kind of give us a history and walkthrough, and let us. Yeah, I'm very curious about that.
yeah. So I did not come from coffee. I actually came from right before touring coffee roasters. I own another business called Pips and Bounce, which is a ping pong bar restaurant here in Portland, Oregon, that my brother and I opened up in 2014. Just imagine bowling except with ping pong tables, which for some reason in this country there's a lot of bowling alleys, but there's not many ping pong places. So we wanted to change that up. And Portland was a great place to do that because half the year it's gloomy and rainy, and ping pong being an indoor sport really kind of catered towards the Portland people. So I would say for 2014 up to 2020, I was really focused on that business, growing that business. And right before the pandemic hit, we actually were about to sign for our second location in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we actually got on Shark Tank to franchise. We didn't
Wow.
get any investments because we didn't have a second location to kind of show the proof of concept the franchise, but they were highly interested. But all of that went hard stop towards, what was that, March or April in 2020. I specifically remember my story of how things kind of happened was we had a taping party at Pips and Bounce. We had a big screen TV. We were about to show Shark Tank. We had our most loyal customers come out. We basically had our own in-house party. And then we had a 30 minutes of, or I don't even know, 30 minutes, maybe 25 minutes of fame being on the TV show. And we had the local news crew come out, do the taping and everything. And then the videographer, I distinctly remember this as if it was yesterday. He was taping with his videographer, and then he got a cell phone call, and he saw the message on his call, and he's like, "I'm sorry, like we have to go. This is urgent." And we're like,
Whoa.
"Oh, like something happened? Like like of course, naturally, to go take care of it." And he
Yeah.
said, "We got our first COVID case here in Portland."
Oh,
So
wow.
they left that taping, that party of Shark Tank, and a week, maybe a week and a half later, we shut down Pips and Back.
Wow.
Yeah, and we spent all this energy, all this work, all this time and money to build this business and hopefully expand the way that we wanted to expand, and then the pandemic just hit us hard and everything just stopped. I had to lay myself off. I had to lay off my whole entire staff, which was at that time, I think close to 30 or 35 people. And we really had no idea what was in store for us. So this was like well before I was even thinking about coffee. So during that time of basically us being forced to being home and not do anything, I actually applied to work at Amazon Fulfillment because one of my staff members said like, "Hey, they're hiring. If you want extra money or do something, like they're one of the few people in the city of here in Portland that's actively hiring." So I was like, I cannot not do anything at home, considering I was working, 12 hours every day, working on the business, working in the business, growing the business, doing everything that I can. And then I just had to mentally do something. Otherwise, I'd just be like going crazy at home. So in the Amazon fulfillment, my job there was to be a picker. And what a picker is basically picking people orders. And maybe you've heard the stories of how the Amazon warehouses work, but basically we have like a pod. Each person has a pod with like a computer screen and like 5 or 6 bins, and then you have like these Roombas that's like basically on steroids, carrying a big tower of products. And when these Roombas come to your pod, basically robotics, there's a light that's shown on which of the shelf area on the pod, and then on the computer monitor will show you the letter and number, exactly what you need to pull the item from, put it in the bin, push it down the conveyor belt. And let me paint you a picture. This is a 1,000,000 square foot warehouse, so it is just a major production facility. And we're a small gear in the cog. But I did that for about 6 to 8 weeks at the beginning of COVID, which was the world was kind of upside down.
Yeah.
And that experience actually led me to my coffee journey, because in the first 6 to 8 weeks of COVID, I got to see what people were ordering on their phones or on their computer. And there's basically 2 categories that it was most popular: pet food and coffee. That's what people were ordering, at least what I know, in a small area of Portland, which I think I can safely say I can apply to most cities in the country at that time of the pandemic. So I was kind of thinking, it's like, oh, this is interesting. This is a pattern that's emerging. And I think kind of my entrepreneurial mind started to get into gear again. And then I also heard the term that I didn't hear before when I was growing Pips and Bounce, was basically the COVID kind of determined which businesses were essential and which businesses were non-essential. And Ping Pong Bar Restaurant is in the non-essential category. The world can definitely continue on without Pips and Bounce and or ping pong in bars. But coffee, at least what I experienced at working at Amazon, was just probably almost, I would say every 10 orders I picked, maybe 4 to 6 of them were coffee. Maybe the other half was maybe pet food, and the other things were just random trinkets that people were buying because they had nothing else to do.
Right.
So that kind of got my gears running. It's like, okay, well, the world is going to crap. This is in my lifetime. This is what people are ordering, pet food and coffee. I'm going to look into this because I need a business that I need to know that's essential for the future. Did research how to do pet food. Within a solid 10 seconds, completely lost interest. It's like, not my
I
jam.
was gonna ask, like, how was the research on the pet food? But you just answered it right there.
Yep,
Just solid 10
10
seconds. You're
seconds.
like, nope, not for me.
Yep, I love pet. I just don't have no interest in making pet food. But then coffee, coffee. Everyone knows coffee. Everyone kind of knows the art and love and just kind of the lust for coffee because it's such an aromatic. It is such a sensory experience that people have to start their day with. And upon my research, the barrier of entry, as you and probably many other roasters know, is actually quite easy for coffee. We all know coffee is probably one of the oldest industries in the world. I mean, coffee's been around forever. The technology, especially in the past, let's say century or so, like the access to making coffee is really about time and temperature. It's about as simple as you can get. But we live in an age where, like, you can have these massive machines, or we can even have like a popcorn machine, and you can still make coffee.
Yep.
So I actually started off with I think they called it was a 1 pound roaster, but I actually put 375 grams in this little drum roaster, and my heat source was a camp stove that had this analog dial
Uh-huh.
to give more heat or not, and that's how I learned to roast coffee. So I actually repurposed my kitchen at my ping pong bar restaurant into a little coffee station because I had the space, I had the time, and I had a lot of missed trials of coffee, so to say. A lot of smoke happened. Let's just say that. A lot of burnt coffee.
Yeah, when you first start roasting coffee, like when you're roasting coffee for the first time, you don't anticipate how much smoke you're going to make and how much of that moisture is getting released out of the coffee bean.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it gets a little gnarly. Yeah, so I totally understand, but wow, that is that's a really interesting part. Like I knew about Pips and Bounds, your
Yeah.
restaurant there, and that is so cool that you saw something that people kept ordering, and it just kind of got your as I call it the hamster wheel, like our
Yeah.
brains kind of going, and like you said, the entrepreneur wheel kind of like spinning, like okay, people are ordering a lot of coffee, I'm going to dive into that. So that's great. So okay, let me ask you this though, Eugene. When
Yeah.
you were roasting coffee in your kitchen and you
Yeah.
brewed a cup of coffee, looking back now, how would you rate that coffee?
Delicious.
So we had I had like this little coffee drive through. They're all over here in Portland. There's basically a small little kiosk, right? You just pull up window, you get your coffee, you get your pastry, and you drive off. Um, and when I worked at Pips and Bounce, I always had this one coffee kiosk I went to right next to the restaurant supply store where I got all like my supplies for Pips and Bounce. And I would befriend her and ask her for feedback of the coffee that I would be roasting, in the early days. And I distinctly remember I gave her kind of one of maybe my second or third or fourth roasts ever. And she opened it and she's like, I can't serve this. I'm like, why not? She's like, it's so under roasted. Like, there's no way I can give this to customers. And I'm like, oh, okay. I got a
Would
lot.
you rate it as quote unquote white coffee then?
Probably, yeah. White coffee if anything else, because I was in Portland. is a city of there's so much roasters. There's so much good coffee. I just told on my account today that we are absolutely spoiled with probably the best coffee access in the country, within a 5 mile radius, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, when I was doing my research and learning in the very beginning, was like, everything was light roast. Portland loves light roast, light roast, light roast. And I was trying to figure out what constitutes as light roast, because it's not an equation. It's kind of subjective. It's a lot of it about cupping and century and all this. And I was trying to roast light in the very beginning, just trying to figure out what that is. And my first feedback, hard feedback was like, it's too light. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And then you just learn by your mistakes. You learn by your feedback. People who are actually having a business to sell to customers. And that's how, this kind of business started, is basically you learn by trial and error. And then over time, we became like, okay, I think we can start to maybe sell to friends and family, and maybe they want to buy it. Probably took a year and a half before we started roasting that we can actually feel confident to sell to our friends and family. Would that be about right?
Sure.
Yeah, something like that. And
Okay.
I remember, we got our first order from our friends, like, yeah, we want to have 3 bags of coffee. And it's like, oh my God, this is going to take us an hour. This is going to take us so long. And we were so unconfident of giving, when you, in this industry of food and beverage, you're giving your product to somebody else to enjoy, to taste. And everyone is different. So you're suddenly giving your product to the masses, and you're like, oh my God, are they actually going to like this, or are they not going to like this? It's kind of a very awkward feeling to be in that position, to be basically judged, especially in a city of coffee.
Especially when you are a brand, and you made a great point here, because as a new entrepreneur, when you are, with us being in the coffee industry, when you're roasting coffee for the very first time, well, actually selling your coffee for the very first time, outside of your family and friends, because obviously your family and friends is going to be kind of your safety net, and they're going to tell you like it is, whether they love it or hate it whatsoever, which is great, which can be great feedback from them, because they're people you actually trust.
Right.
And it's because there is a little bit of that unsettledness, I guess you could say, when you sell your product and you're like, okay, I hope they like it. I just sold this bag, and your butterflies in your stomach. So yeah, I totally relate to that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I would say the foundation of me you and me can agree this. It's not an easy business. This is something that is not successful overnight. This is a kind of a long game business. But my experience at Amazon, that tiny little window at the beginning of COVID, which the world was, went crazy, is basically my biggest driving motivator, that this business, if you do it right and you do it well, that it works. And you can't really say that to businesses in general. There's no guarantee that can be, yeah, this business is going to guarantee to work. You cannot say that at all.
Right.
But I know
oh, sorry.
No,
I was going to say, you are actually leading into something that is really awesome, and I would love to circle back on that.
Yeah, sure.
But Tato, you are the head roaster of Touring Coffee Roasters. Tato is amazing. She is great at what she does. She is a bronze medal winner for Golden Bee North America last year. Bronze, right? You guys won a bronze? Bronze, yep. You won your first medal at a roasting competition. Tato, I'd love to kind of get a little bit more about how you know Eugene, how you became the head roaster, and just kind of talk about what you enjoy most about roasting coffee. I'd love to, learn a little bit more about that.
So Tato is a tennis instructor. She's actually a very accomplished tennis player. She is from the Republic of Georgia. So she might be a little shy in a public setting and or podcast setting when you're talking to a public audience. Just because, like, I'm sure if I was in her shoes in a foreign country, that I probably wouldn't speak that well either. But I met Tato on a tennis court. She was actually my tennis instructor. I played tennis when I was a junior. She was a tennis coach here, and when I was working at Pips and Bounce, when you work in a bar restaurant, you eat awful food and you don't exercise. And I was like, this is getting to the point of no return. I need to exercise. So I actually started to play tennis again, and that's how I met Tato. How many years ago do you think that is?
7.
7 years ago.
7.
Wow.
Yeah, 7 years ago. And then I distinctly remember when COVID happened, because I would probably see you, maybe once or twice a week at the tennis center?
More.
Yeah, something like that. And then
I got laid off too.
Yeah, you got laid off. So we both basically had nothing to do. And I just basically asked her, because we actually played a couple of doubles tournaments together that we actually won a few of them. And
we have beside that lot of medals.
Yeah, like we have this tennis ball that you can see right here. That is one of our.
I see it in the back. Yeah, that's one of your little trophies.
It's our tennis ball on top of what is a Turkish?
Oh, it's Turkish called Turka.
Yeah.
I love it.
I brought it from Georgia. It was gift.
Yeah, and I basically just asked her because I knew she had nothing else to do. And I asked her, like, hey, do you want to roast coffee with me? Because, like, I'm bored alone, and it would be nice to have some company. And we just basically just started doing it together. But I think a turning point when we were doing this journey together was basically we signed up for a Q grade class.
Yeah.
Like an official Q grade class.
So okay.
One of the few classes that was actually being held in the beginning of COVID. Just because, when you have more than 2 people in a room, it gets weird. When you're sharing like spoons and or like, dining equipment, that just gets weird. But this Q grade happened. And the short story of the Q grade.
I like when he's saying that. It's the best part. Go for it.
The short story of the Q grade, because it's a pretty extensive course. I utterly failed that class. I was probably like last place of 15 people in that course. Like, just bombed it.
Whoa.
To the point where I was taking some of these tests, because I think you could take like 30 tests or something crazy amount of tests. And I think like the last like hour of the test, I don't even know how many tests it was. I was just like, whatever. Lost patience. I'm like, this is the stupidest thing ever. I was so tired and exhausted drinking so much coffee. I couldn't tell between Colombia or Ethiopia or Guatemala, doing this in a black room and a red light. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Wow.
On the other hand, Tato completely aced it on her first go of her Q grade.
Yeah, I love it.
Dude.
Sounds so good when he's saying.
Oh wow, Tato, that's pretty rad. Like, hats off. That's awesome.
And the sad
I'm
part
sorry,
about it,
Eugene.
and I tried to even cheat off her, and I still couldn't pass. Like that's how bad it was for me.
Oh no! Wow. Oh man, that's insane. I think you guys are the first people. Well, I've met several people who are certified Q graders, but I didn't realize that you guys actually went through the course. And like based upon what you're telling me, like I knew that Q grading courses were pretty intense.
Yeah.
Because there's so much factored into it. But wow, I mean, holy moly, dude! Like that sounds really, really intense.
Yeah, it's.
He's not going back.
Yeah, I know where I am not good at, but that's where this partnership for Touring Coffee Roasters work. because she is the roaster. She does the sensory cupping, the aromatics, and making sure all the coffee is within the standards of what she knows and what she wants. I rely on her on that, and vice versa. Like, I kind of take care of the business. I try to do the sales. I try to do the walk and talk the talk. And I know the foundation of the company is based on the coffee bean, which is her. So it kind of works that way. But she always reminds me that she's a better roaster than I am. I just kind of ride her tail on the roasting part.
Aw, thank you.
But it's so great to hear that because obviously, Eugene, you went through the courses. You were like, okay, this obviously is not my path, and you guys, in a way, kind of found in the partnership who has the strong skills in each part of the business. So like you said, Eugene, with the sales and the emails, the administration side of things, where Tato, so Tato, you're officially a certified Q grader, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so see, you got you're a certified Q grader. You are also the lead roaster, which being a certified Q grader also helps you with roasting profiles and with how you approach the roast of the coffee. And I think that is a great quality that you have. I don't even have a Q grading certificate, and for you to have that is amazing. That is wonderful, and I'm so glad that you guys found a way in the different aspects of the operations of the business. Like, you guys have found like what is your strong suits, and that it's been working with you. That is really, really awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. I did want to circle back on the point that we were talking about earlier, Eugene, was you kind of leading into how we were just talking about Portland and the different coffee roasters out here. There's so many different coffee folks out here. Listen, Portland, the Pacific Northwest in general, is a mecca of coffee. I don't care what anybody says. Portland is greater than Seattle. Come at me, bro, if you know. But that's just my personal opinion. But with that said, I think it goes, standing out from the crowd, right, is it in one aspect, you're putting yourself out there, like going to markets, going to events. Like, I actually met you guys at the Unique Markets. Like, it was an indoor market for local vendors, and we actually met there. I forgot how I found you guys. I think I found you guys on Instagram, and then I started following you, and then I met you in person, and I was like, oh, that's how we met. But in a way, though, besides doing the markets, branding. I think branding is really the huge key thing when it comes to establishing yourself as a coffee brand. Am I right?
No, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So what's your spin on that?
Yeah. So in the beginning of this whole coffee was basically, I would go to a store, like a local, probably high-end grocery store, and I would look at the coffee section, and you see all the big players, Stumptowns, even the bigger ones, the Starbucks, and even the small local roasters that have a bag, on their shelves. And this is coming from me. Is when I looked at the name of either the roaster or the name of the bag, it was it was just not tangible. I remember one roaster, which I'll keep nameless. Their bag name was like kayak or canoe or something. Just, it was kind of unmemorable. And I was kind of thinking, you know what? There's a story that can be told by just the name of the bag. And my personal interest, I do a lot of motorcycle, I do a lot of camping, I love traveling, and I have memorable places that I would love to go back to, or they have stuck in my mind from these travels. So I was like, why don't I think about maybe naming some of these bags based on places that I've been to that elicit some sort of emotion, whether if it's dry, whether if it's wet, whether if it was rainy or something, that might connect to the being or to the destination of the name of the bag. So, for example, one of our early, probably our first bag was our Guatemala, and this Guatemala, we wanted to approach this roast as basically we wanted just a solid coffee, nothing too experimental, nothing too dark, just smooth, well balanced, no surprises. This is how we approached our Guatemala, which is still to this day the same being of how we approach it. But the name of the bag is called Hawk's Nest. And Hawk's Nest is basically a small little area in the New Jersey waterfront river or something that when I lived in New York City that we would always visit to as a motorcyclist. This is basically a cliff or a mountain on one side, a valley on the other side, and just a road that snakes through between them. And it's just a fun place to be in, especially in the fall time where you see the trees are just basically on fire because of all the colors. And I'd like to think that most of America has never heard about this place called Hawk's Nest. And I wanted to have these names where probably most people have not heard of. People have heard of Yellowstone, Yosemite, all the big ones. But I wanted to find something that was kind of unfamiliar to people. So maybe they look at the back of the bag and I have a little story about my experience at this place. And I try to connect it to how we do the profile roast of the bag. And trying to make that customer be like, oh, I want to go to Hawk's Nest. I've never heard of it. And, if this bag was found in New York City, it's like, oh, that's actually not far away. So I wanted to kind of give the idea of a destination that inspires people based from coffee. And that's been kind of how I've been rolling this whole business out with that idea. And I think from customers, they all say Hell's Canyon, which is in, Eastern Oregon. They've been there. They're like, oh, they love it. It's, a beautiful place. And I'm like, yeah, it is quite beautiful. So there's a connection to that I want to have with the customers that, can get a little story as opposed to something that could be intangible. It could be like a desk or a lamp or something. And I'm like, that's not interesting to me. So I just want to have an emotional response to some of these name of bags.
Wow, dude, that is fantastic. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, that's the brand.
Dude, that's so deep. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. It's making that emotional connection with customers. I think the connection in general has to be genuine and authentic. And if you can, obviously, roasting great coffee is one thing, but right. When you have a brand that's really strong and when it comes to actually naming your coffee, not only are you trying to connect it with the main brand, what you're having, but there's also a story in each of the roasts that you're doing. Right. And I absolutely love that. I am on board with you on that. I think that is, as an entrepreneur starting very early, that was one of the hurdles that I had to deal with myself and my company for the first couple of years, because I realized there was a disconnection happening with consumers. And when I did my rebranding, I had to make sure that there is an emotion and a story behind the different coffees that I offer. Yeah. So I absolutely, it's great insight. And that is so amazing that I'm hearing from the perspective of touring coffee roasters on how that connections were made. And it's so awesome. It's really great to hear. Super amazing. Now, I am curious for touring coffee, what you guys Do you have any plans going on? Any big, new, exciting projects that are that you're taking off with? Tell us what's happening in Touring Coffee's world right now.
Yeah, so a year and a half ago, we moved into our full-time roasting facility, which was a huge step in the business. It's a leap of faith. Anytime there's a moment, um, part of the business where you have to take a chance and a risk. And one of them was before we're in our current space, we were in a co-roasting facility, which, that's how many people start off with, because you just basically rent the roaster or you rent the space for, about an hour or whatever, and you do your thing. So we were in one of those spaces, and then for some reason, one or the other, the owner of that space decided to not continue with that business. So that kind of left me and a bunch of other roasters kind of like out in the cold, basically. Of what do we do? How do we find? There's other options here in the Portland area of other co-roasting facilities. But that was kind of a lesson learned for me that touring coffee roasters was dependent on somebody else's decision making. So then, I took the leap of faith with Pips and Bounce, and took the leap of faith of starting a coffee roasting business. And I'm like, all right, this is a moment where like either we have our space or we still kind of figure out with another co-roasting facility and try to figure out a schedule that maybe work for us, and discover the challenges and limitations. So kind of gathered some of the troops that were in that co-roasting facility that were in the same position as me, and it's like, hey, I am looking for my own space. Are you interested in maybe, being part of my facility? And they were all on board, luckily. And, a few of us came with me to my new space, which, I come in here basically every day and I'm like, I like the space. This space works. It's not big, it's not beautiful, but like it works in a very efficient manner. And I think it's a great first step into really throwing ourselves into this roasting project. So that was the first big leap of faith for the business. And the second is basically, the first year is always trying to figure out how to get this off the ground, like any other business. And we survived, we're in this space now a year and a half. And now we've come into the point where we've almost outgrown our space. I literally can't. I'm looking at our space right now. There's literally no empty space that we have that's not something that's coffee or coffee equipment related. I'm not interested in moving out of the space, but I kind of want to align myself with one of the sponsors is getting a bigger roaster, which is Primo, which is something that is on my radar. And it's getting to the point that we're roasting enough and we're kind of having some long days of roasting where like there's no shortcuts in roasting, and the only shortcut is investing into a bigger roaster. So I think we're almost at that point where like, okay, either we can roast 14, 16 hours or we could just get a bigger roaster. And I think the bigger roaster will definitely make our lives a little more balanced in terms of having the super long days of roasting. So that's probably our next step, which actually probably leads us to be in your roasting facility that you share with Tim, because that's where you guys roast on your Primo. And, we've been talking about this for a while, and just get our hands on that roasting equipment and just to see if it makes sense for us. And that's one of the perks of being in Portland, that you can have access to so many different roasting equipment, just to kind of, spend some time on and see if it makes sense.
Yeah. By the way, Christian, Brandon, the co-owners of Primo, if you're listening, you gotta talk with Tato, Eugene, make it happen, Captain. So shout out to Primo for that. Yeah, I totally. It's crazy that I think all three of us relate on some levels, whether it's on the roasting side Me and Tato with some roasting, and then with you, Eugene, on the business side of things. And it's really cool that we have this like common ground when it comes to like how our businesses are for sure. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like I feel like I wish our space was a little bit bigger because we have three coffee roasting companies under one roof. Obviously, with Tim from Blind Coffee, and then Capital Press Coffee Company, and things are getting a little tight because all three of us are growing our businesses, but not enough where we can expand our footprint at the moment.
Right.
But we I personally love being in Hillsboro. I really like it. We love our customer base. We love our customers that come in and get lattes and stuff too.
Hmm.
So it's a matter of like success doesn't happen overnight, and even if you do have the success, there are different tiers of success that each business can achieve.
Right.
So obviously the situation that y'all are having is that you have your space, but you need a bigger roaster because you're spending longer hours on the current machine that you have. And then with us, it's we have a decent sized machine,
Yeah.
but the square footage,
Yeah.
it feels like it's getting smaller and smaller.
Can we just meet somewhere in the middle and just
Yeah, yes, right. I agree 1,000%. Like just if we can meet in the middle, that'd be wonderful, uh, for sure. So that's really great news that you guys are looking to invest into getting a bigger roaster. That means your volume is going up. That is fantastic, and I know Prima will definitely help you guys out with that. And obviously, coming to our facility, spinning the whip, kicking the tires there, would be great. And so with that as well, is there anything new and exciting that touring is going on? Anything else that people should be aware of?
yeah. I mean, it's so coffee is found in many different shapes and forms and locations. When I was starting this business at the beginning of COVID, was basically my model was to focus on grocery stores because that's where people were shopping to get their essential products. And that's still part of our big focus now is to be in grocery stores. Um, I can say right now we are not interested in doing a brick and mortar cafe, knowing that my experience of having another business that's brick and mortar, uh, it just requires a lot of manpower, a lot of labor, and like for myself, my experience, it kind of spread me too thin. And I didn't want to do that right now because I wanted to focus on the growth of the business through what we can do in our roasting facility, which is basically kind of through distribution or through shipping. That being said, the business has evolved from just grocery stores. We've got into offices where people are kind of going back to offices, and we're supplying coffee and equipment to these offices, which is an interesting um, opportunity. Sorry, somebody's just coming in here. No, okay. And then we have this really cool product called the pour over pack, which I kind of did the research towards the beginning of our journey. Was basically the question I asked myself: why would anybody buy Touring coffee roasters on our shelf? Because it's one of hundreds of different roasters in the area. And I found out, like, how do people drink coffee in different parts of the world? And I came across this pour over pack that's a single serve that is ground coffee that's in a filter that's a pour over. And it basically just unfolds over the cup. And when I saw this, it just screamed Pacific Northwest camping. Because I camp a lot, and when I go camping in the morning and the coffee is not made, like it's just an ordeal. Boiling the water, who has the French press? Is the coffee equipment out? Do I have enough water to boil for everyone? Do I have enough grounds for everyone? It's just a hot mess. So this pour over pack was kind of the solution for what I thought for camp coffee was basically it's a single serve. I just bring multiple package in a plastic bag or whatever in a camp sack, and I just have hot water ready when people wake up, and then just have the coffee ready whenever they feel like. And it's just a much simpler way to start off your camp day. And that product has evolved into many different ways. Largely, I get a lot of it through online e-commerce sales through that product. But I am discovering that we're getting into hotels, really popular at retail stores, especially specialty gift stores. They move a lot of product. It's just so unique, and it's biodegradable, and it just makes sense compared to all the other single serves that kind of in the industries that are plastic or just kind of accumulate in the landfills. That I know when I sell this product that I actually feel good about it, that when it's being used, that it's not, doing any harm to the environment or climate, because kind of a real thing that we're all kind of challenging with this whole climate thing. So that's one thing that I feel good about, that is here to stay for touring coffee roasters, which is this pour over pack. Yeah.
Well, right on. That's super amazing. And I've seen the packs in person. That is a great, quick, simple solution, and it incorporates into touring coffee roasters brand with being outdoors and hiking and traveling. It makes total sense to have a product like that a part of your collection. That is definitely wonderful. And I have to say, your coffee is solid. Absolutely love your coffee. Whenever I see you at events or wherever you're serving coffee, I always have to tell people, like, yep, I know touring coffee. They're great friends of ours, and you can't go wrong with the coffee there.
That being said, Keri, you don't drink too many coffees outside of touring these days. Neither do I. But when we were at our last event together, which was a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even last week,
the
coffee that you gave us to what you had for a demo, I told Tato, I was like, this is a solid cup of coffee. It's been a while since we've actually tried another person's coffee, just because we just know that we enjoy our own coffee, and then anything outside of that is just a big question mark. And I hate to say it, but I think we've become a little bit of coffee snobs, even though I try not to come across that way. But I thoroughly enjoyed your cup of coffee, so thank you. I think it was the Rwanda coffee that you gave us.
Close. It's the anaerobic natural processed Zambia.
Zambia. I knew it was African. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you joined it. Honestly, I'm very particular about which African coffees I like, and the Zambia. I've never roasted Zambia coffee before. But the fact that it came from a woman's co-op and that it was the anaerobic natural, I was like, ooh, I have to try it. And boy, when I sampled it, it blew my socks off. And I'm like, I gotta get this coffee. And it's been great. I've been getting nothing but feedback. But thank you guys. The Hawk's Nest. Honestly, the Hawk's Nest is a great coffee. And I thoroughly, definitely enjoy it as well. So with all that, no, what were you going to say? Yeah,
for customers who, are not roasters or in the industries, I do appreciate the comments, but from people who work in the industries, especially in the same responsibilities as roasting coffee, I don't take that as a grain of salt. I take that as a serious, whether if it's a good or bad comment, it's something that I definitely listen to.
Right. Exactly. When you're now we're compadres, and obviously sharing each other's coffee, is one thing. But if you met like the founder or the owner of I don't know, let's say Proud Mary Coffee, or who else? I don't know, Stumptown or something like that. Like you definitely be a little hesitant and like, oh boy, I wouldn't say hesitant, but a little intimidated. Intimidated is the word.
Yeah.
I would be a little intimidated of like, here you go, and then they give the feedback, because you're like, I don't know if they're gonna like it or not.
Can I share a story?
Yeah, share a story. We love stories.
Kind of follow along the grain of serving your coffee to the public and seeing how they react to it. So the story goes basically one morning I woke up, and I wake up pretty early today. It's around 6:30 or 7 or something. But right around that time of waking up, like I get my notification of orders on my website on my phone. And in a span of probably 10 minutes, 25 orders happen. And I'm like, oh my God, my website got hacked. And I'm like, this is like not something I want to deal with. Like, I don't even know how to deal with that. But look, it was all online orders. And they were all orders of my geisha, which was the award-winning bag. That is also the most expensive bag that we sell. And I was looking at this, and I'm like, God, somebody hacked just the most expensive bag that we have and we sell. And I'm like, this is just a real pain. But then a couple of orders left comments on the order. And the comments was basically suggested by Jane Doe, who came highly recommended to the group of people that we all follow her, and she suggested this coffee. And I'm like, huh, okay. So this might be legit. So then, get my day started. I come into the office, I look at my computer, and I'm like, yep, another 2 customers said something very similar. And the first person, they all refer to the first person who ordered. So I'm like, okay, like this is definitely connected. And the first person who ordered, I did a little bit of research because, we all have internet these days. And she is like an innovator or lead roaster at one of the roasteries of Starbucks, the big flagship stores.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked her up, and I didn't really see much of an online presence aside from where she worked. But that in itself was basically, it's like, okay, well, if she likes it and she is in the industry at that caliber, and I'm sure she probably maybe has some sort of blog or email group or something that, somehow my product came across her desk and she made a cup of coffee and say, dang, this coffee needs to be, shared with my group of people. And then that morning it got shared and all that stuff happened. So that was one of the few proud moments that we had, that like, okay, the coffee that we won the award was great from a competition basis, but from just a general public of people who love coffee, it it resonated. So that was a fun story that was panicky at first, but then it ended really, it's like, okay, we felt justified, because sometimes you just never know. But that was the moments where you just felt like, okay, we're doing something good and we're doing something right.
Wow. That's super cool. Congrats on that. That's really awesome. That is so amazing that it just takes one person, whether, someone obviously who has such a presence, right? Whether it's in the industry or not in the or maybe an online presence, such a following, and that they come across your coffee product, they try it, and when they do absolutely love it, they're going to share it with whoever they're with, and that obviously caused a ripple effect, and a good ripple effect, because you ended up getting orders, you ended up gaining new customers because of it, and that's a really amazing story.
Yeah.
So, for time's sake, I'm looking at the timer here, so I wanted to be conscious of that. But it's been so great sitting with you guys, getting to learn about the story of touring roasters and learning about you, Eugene, and Tato, and how you all have been taking your business that started during the pandemic from an Amazon warehouse to what it is today. You guys have done such an incredible job. It shows how passionate you are about your coffee, about your brand. It It really resonates. And if you guys have a chance to meet Tato or Eugene in Portland, like having a conversation with them, they are very genuine about the coffee and they really care about the quality and just coffee. We're all coffee nerds, right? And so great people, great energy. So with that said, Eugene, Tato, thank you so much for joining the show. And also, where can people find you? What stores are you in? And how can people learn more about touring coffee roasters?
Yeah, so we are primarily still based in Portland, Oregon in terms of our retail presence. Stores like Market of Choice. We are like in Basics. We are other kind of independent grocery stores. We are actively in talks with all kind of the major players in the local area of Portland and beyond. I'm actually having conversations with Gelson's and all their stores in LA and another big chain in San Francisco. And we're trying to crack the case of trying to get into distribution, which is one of the most difficult things I've had to come across trying to break through scaling this business, but I know that's the next step. But really kind of the foundation in terms of people who are listening, if you order from our website, we roast to order. And so we always ensure you have fresh roasted coffee. It's never sitting on our shelves. We don't have any pre-bags sitting on our shelves or anything waiting. We wait for the order, we roast it, put it together, and we date stamp it of the roast date. So we always ensure you get fresh roasted coffee because I think life is short. Why skip on some crap or old coffee?
Exactly. So I'm assuming touringroasters.com is the best website.
Yeah, touringcoffeeroasters.com.
Excellent. And then and people can find you obviously on Instagram, Facebook, any other social media platforms I'm missing?
That's one of the things that I'm not good at, rightfully, admittedly so. But yes, Facebook, Instagram is the two primary platforms. I'm not done TikTok, with very little LinkedIn presence, but it's what I do with the two things that I can do with Facebook and Instagram when I'm not roasting coffee or putting people's orders together.
Awesome. Well, Eugene, Tato, thank you again for coming on to the Drop Temp Coffee Podcast. Congratulations for you on the distribution thing. We should invite you back on once you get that all squared away and set up and talk about distribution on another episode. That'd be really awesome. And thank you again for being on the show. Yeah. And thank you to our sponsors for sponsoring Drop Temp Coffee Podcast. You can find the episode for Touring Coffee Roasters on all our streaming platforms. You can find it on our YouTube channel as well. If you are listening to the show, please rate our show, leave a comment, let us know if you love it or you hate it, and give us at least 5 stars on the podcast so that way it's pushed up in the algorithm. And if you're not subscribing, why the hell you ain't subscribing? Well, you should. If you enjoy this content and getting to meet other coffee roasters and learning more about the coffee industry. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.